Hi, this is Dustin with Dustin's Dollars. Today I'm going to be talking about Aquabounty, ticker AQB, specifically about the water permitting issues that they seem to be having in Ohio. I'm going to give you my best overview of my understanding of the situation and a little bit of data as we can try to, data and evidence we can try to come up with to figure out, is this a material risk for the company or not? Before I begin, let me remind you that I am not a financial advisor or a financial professional of any sort. All opinions that I express in this video are mine and do not represent those of any company or any other individual. I currently hold a long position in Aquabounty, so this video should be for your entertainment purposes only, because I could be wrong about everything I say in this video. You need to do your own research before making any investment decisions. So, Aquabounty. There've been a couple news stories come out recently. I'll flip them real quick. There's public comments about some of the permits they're trying to get. There's some people writing in to the Bryan Times. I save these as PDFs, but you can go to the Bryan Times website and read some of these. I think you might need a subscription to that. There's been some, other news stories, people opposing some permits, and so I wanted to give my best understanding of the situation right now and then go through this in a little bit of detail. So there are two major permits that matter here, right? There's the permit that gives Aquabounty the ability to draw the water that they need for their farm. And then there's a separate permit that lets them, discharge the wastewater, the water that they're no longer need to use, after it's been used up in the salmon farm. And the situation is, that those are separate, and there's actually the initial permit to consume water was originally granted, right? So this is, I think you can find it on this website right here. Sorry, too big. This is with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, and Aquabounty originally requested a permit for 3 million gallons per day for use at its planned facility. This was, again, they filed this back in 2021, it looks like, and this was approved on March 14th of 2022. Now they have refiled or filed for a new permit. I don't have the website here, but they filed a new permit trying to effectively up this to, I think it's 5.25 million gallons per day. And that has not yet been approved. That is under discussion now. And that is the subject of some of these. I think that might have been this one here. Yeah, so this is the Eastwell field. Will allow Aquabounty to draw a maximum of 5.25 million gallons per day. This was a news story in the Bryan Times saying, hey, there's public comments open for on this permit. And there's been some questions submitted. This is one from, Janet Rathke asking about a couple of these things and saying that, there's just some skepticism here. Here was another one from someone named Kathy Liu, and she references this Mission-Do aquifer and says that she's concerned, this will affect the aquifer's ability to regenerate on a sustainable level. And so I was a little bit curious to try to, form an opinion. Like, I'm an investor in the company, but, that sounds bad, right? Obviously, I don't want to be, both from an ethical standpoint, I don't think it would be good for them to actually be taking up the water in an aquifer and running it dry. And even just from an investor's perspective, this is depleting their source of water. That's a bad long-term investment, right? Because they also need the water, the company does, right? And I know that's a bit of a separate concern from the residents, but as an investor, that obviously matters for, they need to be able to source water. And so if they're going to be depleting their source of water, that's also bad for the company. So that didn't really pass my common sense test, because I have to imagine that the company would have thought about that and done at least some analysis to be convinced that they're going to not be depleting their source of water. But so I did a little of research to try to answer this question for myself, and here is what I could find. It's not a great, it's not definitive answer, but I didn't actually know how much is 5.25 million gallons, right? Because that sounds like it could be a lot without having any context, but I don't know what the current consumption is of that. And I did some looking, and this also gives a little bit of background and some of the opposition here to some of these folks. But I found a page on the U.S. EPA website talking about the Mishindo Aquifer, and basically, if I read this correctly, and feel free to look at this yourself. In 2007, the city of Bryan, Ohio, which is a general area, they applied to get this particular aquifer sort of labeled as designated as a sole source aquifer. And again, from the EPA's perspective, that would mean that this is the only source of drinking water for people in an area. And I didn't look in detail in this, but I can imagine that probably gives it special protections and probably would lead to things like denying companies the right to pull water for industrial use from this source. Again, I don't know definitively, but that would be my guess. And so there's actually a couple of documents here, quite a few of them, talking about this. But I went through one of these, which was one of these meetings talking about this Mishindo Aquifer as part of this process where they were trying to get this designation. And because I was looking for here, like somewhere in here, surely they're saying how much water there is or how much is being consumed. And I did finally find it in this presentation. So they're saying, it provides water for more than 385,000 people, and that is a consumption of 72 million gallons per day. So this gave me, a piece of information I was looking for. If there are currently 72 million gallons per day being consumed from this aquifer, and Aquabounty wants to consume 5.25, right? 5.25 over 72, that would be a 7.3% increase. So yes, that is a material increase, but that also doesn't seem ridiculous. Like it'd be surprising to me to say that 7% increase is really the thing that is going to totally ruin this aquifer, right? That it's such a delicate balance. I would be a little bit skeptical of that claim being made in the abstract if somebody had a concrete data on that, or a concrete rationale as to why that additional 7% of consumption would really be the problem. Like, I would be interested to hear that, but it doesn't seem like the folks who are have concerns about this have backing data to really make that case. One of the other interesting things here was this was the final update on this particular case. And this is a bit of a tangent to Aquabounty, but the city of Bryan, this whole process they were going through, they apparently were not able to actually provide enough data. They weren't able to actually prove that this was the sole source for these residents. And so it said in 2013, the EPA has determined that the sole source aquifer designation for this petition is indefinitely suspended, right? And so they did not actually they didn't even get this designation at the time. They weren't able to actually show that this was the only source of water for folks there. So it does at least give some background on the attitude of folks here, right? Where they are trying to protect this aquifer in a way that really they don't have the data to back up. And let's see, what is this? This doesn't matter, but okay. So that is the current state of the water consumption permit, as I understand it, right? So there's again, to recap, the 3 million gallons per day permit was approved. There's a second permit that they filed that would supersede that one, that is for 5.25 million gallons per day, and that is under review. People have sort of abstract concerns, but I don't know that there's to me, in my estimation, this doesn't seem like it's a huge risk given how much that 5.25 million gallons of consumption would be relative to the total consumption. Oh, I actually don't know if I mentioned this. Sorry, I think I failed to say this. This 72 million gallons per day figure was from this presentation in January of 2010. So presumably the water consumption has even increased since then, which would mean that 5.25 million gallons per day that Aquabounty is, has filed to get approval to consume, would be an even smaller percent of the overall water consumption. So again, that's the state of that one. Now, separately, there is also this permit for being able to get rid of their wastewater, right? They actually suck in all of that water, then they consume some of it, and then they actually are going to put a good chunk of that water back out into a nearby stream, river or something. I can't recall exactly what it is, but so this has also been a hot button issue, and there was enough public, there's public comments that are open. I think you can go comment somewhere. It's linked in one of these news articles. And then the EPA actually even recently had a meeting in the area, and there were some news articles about that. And there was even this Defiance County commissioners wrote a letter to the Ohio EPA saying that they oppose these permits. Didn't sound like there was a whole lot of, at least from what is reported publicly, it wasn't obvious that there was any concrete data. But again, people just stating, well, we are against it, we are concerned. We want, again, these are the language at least listed here is they wanted to ensure it happens without impeding other residents, businesses, or industries, right? So again, sort of this abstract concern that folks have. Now, a bit of background as far as I was able to tell. Aquabounty, in their plan for the Ohio farm, they plan to actually build a water treatment facility for the wastewater coming out of this. So they're not just taking the water that they use and just dumping it straight into the river. They're actually treating that water so that it meets the standards, all the rules and regulations, to be able to discharge it into the water, wherever they're spitting it out in the river. So that is at least one bit of context that is useful to have. And so there was this meeting that the EPA held. Again, this is another story that I saved a PDF from the Bryant Times. So the EPA held a meeting in the area to sort of gather public comments and answer questions from the public. And there was a lot of there was again, I wasn't there, but I in reading through this article, it does sound like the EPA gave an overview of this process. Basically said, look, we have rules, we have regulations, and we identify which things are, what are the pollutants that we're talking about, right? What are the things that is going to be in their wastewater, and what are they treating for? And we're going to monitor for that, and that's how they are going to handle this, right? They say the Aquabounty project is proposing the discharge of treated water from the Aquabounty facility, and they talk about specifically where exactly that is. And their example, or their sort of illustration they said, for example, if zinc were a pollutant of concern, we would calculate how much zinc could be safely discharged while still maintaining water quality standards. And the NPDES permit, which is the water discharging, that's a permit, I think, to actually build a waste treatment plant or a water treatment plant. That permit would include a limit for the zinc, right? And so she talked about that. And somewhere in here, there was also even a comment, maybe it was in the other story. Yeah. And so then they have this permit that to actually install that system. And she says, what happens when an applicant submits their engineering plans, their engineers, the EPA's engineers, review the plans against the best engineering practices and their rules and regulations to make sure the design is in accordance with those, right? So they're basically saying the EPA gets all their plans for how they're planning to treat the water, and in order for them to grant the permit, they're going to make sure that it is, sort of up to code. And they even had a good quote in here. The system is designed to treat wastewater through a series of different treatment units. All these units and technology are really well proven and traditional technologies. The system is pretty well designed, at least the proposal is, right? And so that, I am interpreting this statement to mean they're talking specifically about the system that Aquabounty submitted to them. So again, to me, as I'm looking about this, I'm reading through this and trying to discern how big of a risk is this for the company, what is the likely outcome. This does seem to give me some faith as an investor, in the company. The company has done a good job, that they are actually in compliance with all the laws and rules and regulations they need to be, and that this permit is likely to be issued. That's what it seems like to me, because the company has actually done what they need to do. And that is basically it. Now, there is one other thing I wanted to call out and mention here, and that is, sorry, let me scroll through my notes. I know I was talking for quite a while. There was a permit recently that was denied, and that was neither of those permits that I talked about before, but they're closely related. This was a permit. Let me read the actual. This is the permit to install the water and discharge lines across a 1.25 mile section. And so basically, sorry, the way it saved the PDF is horrible. I'm sorry, it saved this ad over the text of the article. But basically, they were proposed as a public utility within the right of way along the side of a road. And so this was the literal, pipes, the trench they would need to dig from the facility out to where they are actually discharging the water or pulling the water from their water source. And it says the application by the Village of Pioneer was for two separate lines, a water line and a treatment/discharge line buried side by side in a single covered trench, right? And so again, this is just that local, that line they actually have to put in, because they're not sucking the water from the ground directly at the farm and putting it back out directly, from there. They have to actually get it from the source and then to the actual discharge site. And this was just a permit for them to be able to actually run those lines. And this was denied, but if you read the details here rather than just a headline, it says, after discussions and consulting with our attorney, we are being advised that based on your submission, this would not be considered a public utility, right? And so they denied the application. It says, however, it does not negate the Village of Pioneer from reapplying at a future date. And so really, to me, it sounds like, and again, I do not have any specific knowledge of this, but when I read that, it sure sounds to me like this was a bit of a technicality. Like they're saying, you filed as a public utility. You're not a public utility, denied. You need to file saying you're doing this for industrial use or whatever the alternative is. So I think it is, at least it's accurate to say that this permit got denied, but it doesn't sound like this is a big deal. It sounds like it was, maybe filed incorrectly seems to be the implication when I read through the story and actually dig through the details here. So personally, again, I know this is just a judgment call and I could be totally wrong, but this doesn't sound like it's a big deal either. It sounds like something that's a, surmountable issue for the company. They'll, amend their permit. And it wasn't even clear if the company was filing this, or it says this is the Village of Pioneer who would have to reapply. It sounds like maybe the village was the one who actually needed to get this permit for the company. I'm again, don't know the details there, but I thought that was a bit of an interesting detail as I reported it here. So anyways, that was everything I wanted to talk about today. I hope that gives you some insight and gives you some points to go research for yourself on Aquabounty and the water permitting issues that they have had very recently with their Ohio farm. So, all right, that is it. Is there anything on the live chat? I don't see anything tonight. So just FYI, if you are still watching, I do these streams live, usually in the evening in Eastern US time zone. I do these usually 9, 10, 11 p.m., somewhere around about that time. So, if you ever want to hop on and hop onto my stream and chat with me, questions, comments are always appreciated. So feel free to do that. I talk about individual stocks. Aquabounty is one of them that I do cover from time to time and talk about. So yeah, I would love to have you on, but I will not hold you any longer. Thank you very much for